Hello, everyone. Welcome to Influence Stories. Sorry, we're a little late. We had some technical difficulties, but we're here now. And today we have a very special guest, a very timely guest. We have Dr. Patty Ares Romero. She is Chief Medical Officer at Jackson Behavioral Health Hospital. So thank you so much for joining us today, Doctor.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, there's a lot going on. So I would like to encourage everyone who's listening to us to please put your comments in the comment bar and we'll try to get them answered. We'll run them across the screen as well so that we could answer questions. También hablamos español, ¿no, doctora?
Sí, sí, bilingüe.
Muy bien, se aceptan preguntas en español, también las podemos contestar a través de este Facebook Live, que hoy va a ser un poquito más largo. This will be a little bit longer as we started a little bit late. So it'll be till probably another half an hour. So thank you so much. I'm going to share in the comments this great blog that started me wanting to interview you for today. So the doctor wrote a fantastic blog post talking about how to stay sane during COVID.
Yes.
I'm sure you see it in your practices and talking to your patients and your friends and your family members.
And in real life.
And life. Yeah.
Real life,
We're all
yeah.
kind of going a little cuckoo bananas, right?
Yeah.
How do we stay sane during this time? How do working parents stay sane with managing not only working from home and all of those technical difficulties like the one that we had today before we started,
Yes.
but also trying to manage our kids. Some of us, I have two tiny kids, 5 and 3, have one that started kindergarten, but we have parents with 3 or 4 kids that are trying to navigate homeschooling, home learning, trying to stay safe at the same time while working. So tell us a little bit about what are some of the things that you've seen, some of the concerns that working parents, non-working parents, single parents, and then I would also like to talk about the group that maybe a lot of people don't think about, but single people.
Yeah.
This has also affected people that don't have family living with them. So, they don't have kind of this built-in pod. They are single, they're living alone. So let's talk about all of those people and how we're all going to have to cope through what will probably continue on unless you have other information, but for a few months perhaps.
Yeah,
So
that's
tell
what
me a
we're
little
looking
bit
at.
about what you've seen.
So, I mean, it runs the whole gamut, right? So we have families that have little children like yourself. We have families like myself where I have like one in high school that just started high school and the other one's in middle school. And so how do you get them to, stay focused and do well in school, right? Because especially when they're milestone beginnings. So somebody, my niece as well started high school. I mean, that whole experience of starting high school and doing it at home is not fun. What about a kindergartner that goes to school for the first time? How do you convince this 5-year-old that they have to sit in front of a computer for the entire day,
I couldn't.
right? Which is really, one of my friends is a vice principal of a school, and I hadn't thought about that. And I said, geez, it's true. Because the other ones, when, towards, March, April, it was towards the end of the school. So they had a kind of a groove going. They had a relationship with a teacher, they knew routines, they knew they had to kind of get certain work accomplished. But now it's a completely different ballgame because now it's a new teacher, it's a new grade. So it's very, very challenging. And then to that, you add the fact that people are having to work from home. So you have to jump on a Zoom meeting. Or, today was interesting. I was on a meeting today with a United Way, and one of the people that was in the meeting has a three-year old. And the 3-year-old was kind of like climbing all over her, and we thought it was adorable. And she goes, she's upset because she doesn't have a Zoom. Her 7-year-old brother is on Zoom. I'm on Zoom, but the baby's not on Zoom.
Yeah.
Right? So all these creative things that we really have to be creative. And, it really talks about resilience. I'm a huge advocate on resilience. And it talks about it because how do we come out better and stronger out of this? Right? And how do we look at the reality of what we're faced with? And how do we say, okay, but how can we make it better for ourselves? What do we have control over? And I think that's really the key to kind of surviving.
So let's talk about resilience, right? Let's talk about that's a fantastic concept that I am trying to teach my kids. I learn about it every day myself. As an adult, every day we're faced with resilience. Tell us about what is resilience and why is it so important for not only for us to accept it as part of our lives, but to teach our kids about it.
So the key to resilience is really to be able to look at a problem and solve it and find ways of coping with it, using our coping skills and solving it. Even taking, advantage of maybe other situations in our past that we were able to overcome, and using those skills and those keys to be able to overcome something else. And looking at it from an optimistic way, realistic because it's a reality, but how can I make it better for myself? And I truly believe that it's the key to happiness. If we're able to look at the glass half full as opposed to half empty, it really helps us to enjoy our day, to enjoy our life. For instance, I'll give you two anecdotes. When I first had to wear a mask as a doctor, I wear a mask all the time. So now I have to wear a mask to go to the mall. I have to wear a mask, to go shopping for Publix or whatever it is. And so I thought to myself, my God, how this is such a terrible concept. But then I took a step back and I said, well, you know what? I'm actually saving on makeup and I'm saving time. you know,
Yes,
I don't have to do it. I don't have to put on makeup. I don't have to
yes.
worry about it. I just put on my mask and I'm out the door.
You're at the door, whether
Yeah,
you like it or not. This is what we have to do. Yep, that's
what we have to
true.
do. Things like the fact that we're all staying home together, taking advantage of how we can really become closer as a family. So things like that really help us to come out better on the other side.
That's very important, especially in difficult times and like this one, which could go on longer, but really throughout our lives, right? I mean, we all face difficult situations, and kids face difficult situations all the time. And this is such an important concept to just keep learning about, I think. So let's talk about some of the tips that you brought up in your blog post where you talk about staying sane during
Yeah.
COVID, navigating distant learning, working from home, virtual schools, everybody in the same space.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a little bit some of the things that you mentioned in your blog post. What are some of the tips that you have to stay sane?
Yes. So my biggest one is I think is to make sure you keep a routine. So routine is so important for everyone, because children particularly love routines. They might tell you they hate them, but they really do love them. Just like
Mhm.
they tell you they hate the rules, but they really expect rules and they expect us to teach them. So having a routine, and that means waking up at the same time every day. It doesn't matter whether you're doing homeschool or you're not. You're waking up at the same time. You're actually taking a shower, or you're grooming yourself, brushing your teeth, having breakfast, going to bed at the same time. Very important. That just brings everybody and really gets you prepared for the day, because it's not the same if you get up in pajamas and roll on to the computer. Your mental focus is not the same as if you get up, you brush your hair, you brush your teeth, you have your breakfast, you're in clothes, regular clothes, and then you actually have to focus because you're like, okay, no, I'm not in bed now. I'm actually going to work now, or I'm actually going to go to school now. So it's very important for the mindset. The other big one is you have to have a space in your house. And I know that can be really challenging because if you live in an apartment, like you said, you have four kids, you have, two parents working, or even just one parent working. How do you find that perfect space? So my suggestion is, even if it's just a little nook where you can put them, maybe, part of the living room, part of the kitchen, but it should be something that's clean, cleared of clutter, any kind of clutter, because you want them to, you don't want them to be playing with like rubber bands, or you want to be playing with a stapler. You want them to really focus. And that's really, really helpful for them. You also have to remember that you need time for physical activity. And I know now, I mean, now I know things are starting to open up, but I always felt bad for my patients that lived in Brickell or lived in apartment buildings, and pools were closed, the park was closed. How do you get your kids out to just spread and move and exercise? Especially for the little ones, it's really important, even for their concentration. So you have to make sure that, they're at least getting up, after 20 minutes of a lesson, or 30, the little ones I'm talking about, at least 10 minutes, they get up, they stretch, they can do some nice breathing exercises. We always talk about the balloon, inflating the balloon and then bringing down the balloon, which is a great exercise for the kids. And that also teaches them mindfulness. So things like that always are very important. And having that family time together, I think, we did in my family is we decided we're all going to start exercising at the same time. So we would say, okay, 5:30 in the afternoon, we're all going to do some kind of physical activity, ride your bike, throw basketball, do something. And it actually was kind of cool because the whole family came together at that time,
Oh,
which
really nice.
if it wouldn't have been for COVID, we probably Monday through Friday wouldn't be doing that.
That's right. Running around where everybody is doing their own thing. And it's difficult to talk about, trying to find the silver lining and the blessings. But really, and I'll give my experience on the scheduling. When this all started and I pulled my kids out of preschool in March, I was very, I'm all about, schedules. So I had my schedules up and my kids were following. And I noticed that the more that time went off, I slacked. The busier I got, I slacked. And and you could tell their behavior changes, the more tantrums, and I would bring back to the schedule, and everything would be, a little bit smoother. It's difficult to maintain,
It
even
is.
for myself, to say I'm going to go ahead and get dressed just to be home all day. I kept saying it was kind of like, it was a joke that I spent all day in my gym clothes, even though I wasn't working out really. But I changed. You realize that that's not good for you. And then, keeping the schedule, I think is amazing, is
Yeah.
really important. It's difficult to do by yourself,
Right.
when you don't have the schedule being set by an outside force. So now kids are back in school, so perhaps that helps quite a bit,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
The schools are setting the schedule,
Mhm.
whether you like it, the schedule or not, they're setting the schedule. So that's a help. Maybe we can look at it as a help instead of, you
Yeah.
know, a problem.
Right. And kids need be predictable. Like they need to know, and that's what prevents like too many tantrums or, which they're going to happen. Kids are kids and it's going to
Oh,
happen, right?
absolutely.
But just that it's predictable for them to be able to know, okay, now I know that I'm going to have lunch, or now it's time for me to brush my teeth, or now it's time for a bedtime story before I go to bed. It's that they know what's coming up next really helps them to deal with the stress because they are stressed and sometimes they're not able to verbalize it. Children, which is another one of my tips, try to minimize the amount of social media and news that's negative. Because if you were to leave the TV on, I mean, it'd be negative, negative, negative 24/7. So try to limit that because kids are little sponges and they'll be listening to everything and they'll hear mom and mommy and daddy, and what's going on and why are you so scared, and so that also creates a lot of anxiety for children.
I remember at the very beginning where it was just like, constantly COVID, COVID, and the cases going up, and everybody was just freaking out. My daughter, my 5-year-old daughter, went, Mom, it's just all I hear on the TV is COVID, 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 and I felt like I was in hurricane season, where I was watching a hurricane approach us. Where you have the TV on all the time, watching the cone,
Yeah,
um,
the cone
the
that you
cone of uncertainty, right? And it was the same feeling. I felt like it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And finally my 5-year-old was the one that made me realize how we were driving ourselves crazy, where she was like, Mom, can you change that? It's just COVID, COVID, COVID. And I'm like, you know
Our
what?
girl. Yeah.
You're right.
And I think the difference and the big difference, and I hear from my clients, I have a lot of female clients, and what they were saying is that at least with a hurricane, they knew there was an ending,
That's
right?
right.
So you get prepared. So with a hurricane, and we're Floridians, we got this down pat. So we get the water, we get everything, we hunker down, we put up the shutters if we have to, or we put everything in together, and then we know after 2 or 3 days, maybe the lights go out, maybe they don't, they come, but that week we're good. And with this, the biggest frustration I was hearing was we have no end in sight. What are we going to do? Are our kids going to be constantly? Are we ever going to go outside? Are the parks? I have a very good friend of mine. She has, God bless her heart, she has 4 kids under the age of 4 because she has a set of twins. Yeah,
Whew.
I love her.
Wow.
I'm like, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy because
No, absolutely.
right.
Wow.
And with her, she's like, my biggest problem is there are no parks, and my kids are used to being in the park.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
huge problem for little ones. Huge
Huge problem.
problem.
She would have to go all the way to Homestead. She would sometimes go to West Palm Beach just to get them out because they were going stir crazy inside the house, little ones.
Yeah.
So So yeah, I think the biggest thing has been there has no end in sight. And although we're starting to see some schools do some hybrid, I know some parents still don't feel comfortable with sending their kids to school, and I think that should be a very personal decision, especially if you have any high risk folks at home as well. You know, abuelito, abuelita. You know, you have to be careful. I remember my son who's 12, you know, when everything happened, he goes, I guess we're not gonna be able to see abuelo and abuela. Like he was like, I don't want anything to happen to them, right?
Mhm.
And it goes back to that. It's just, it was scary for all the kids.
Well, it's funny, and I think that it will be very interesting um, to see how this affects kids. Kids are amazing and resilient. They
Yeah,
have this resiliency built into them.
yeah,
But as this will, I mean, if it had been just a week or 2 weeks, but this will form them. I mean, this will be part of who they are.
yeah,
And it'll be interesting to see, they're used to wearing masks, something that we would have never thought,
never, never.
outside.
Hmm.
Today, for example, my daughter's headphones aren't working. She's like, Mom, the coronavirus got my headphones. I'm like, okay, no. So it's like they see it everywhere, and it's kind of, I'm like, I wonder how this will affect them.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, how many kids haven't graduated, haven't been able to have graduations?
Proms.
Proms were taken away, right?
Hmm.
Things, confirmations, bat mitzvah, all these things that these kids haven't been able to see.
And rites of passage that
Right.
are ingrained in your brain and, end up in a photo album somewhere.
Right. I mean, I have, I have other, friends on that, kids graduated from high school, and they've been looking forward to the big graduation before they go to college. Right. And it hasn't happened. Even, their first semester, a lot of them weren't able to go back to college or start college. So yeah, so a lot of those things, but then you see all these wonderful things on social media, all these wonderful, caravans that people have done, and, graduations in the middle of the street, and birthday parties, and all these things, which you say, wow, we're such a wonderful community. We're able to kind of, I don't know who thought it up to begin with, but it was amazing.
The
I used to,
creativity
um,
comes to shine in moments like this, for sure.
and people developing businesses. I mean, there's people that do those huge signs, and they rent them, and you're like, wow, what time did you, have were able to do that? Across the street from my house, we had, our neighbor turned 82, and they had a caravan yesterday. And I'm thinking, wow, this is amazing how, we're able to just kind of come above and kind of think about it and do it. But yes, I agree with you. I think our kids are probably going to be stronger from this,
That's right.
right?
That's a really wonderful way to look at it. And I think that also, I think that we're going to be, at least in our case, a lot closer. We, we were used to being in the spin of every day, work and go drop them off school and pick them up and make sure that I got to run at 5 o'clock and pick them up from daycare and dinner, da da da. And now it's like we're together most of the day, and in the middle of the day, when I'm feeling like I'm having a rough day or I've had a difficult situation at work, I just go to one of my kids and get a hug. And it's amazing, right?
Amazing.
So it also depends on the age range. Maybe teenagers are not quite so generous with the hugs, but the little ones are.
The little ones
So
love it. Yes, hug them as much as you can.
I know it changes, yes. So I think that that's also something that we can all learn from
Right.
is just being able to take advantage of this time and look at it like, this is something that is an opportunity to maybe get closer as a family. Although, it is difficult because we're going through so much, but to try to see, like you mentioned before, the glass half full does help with resiliency.
It
And
does. It really does. And just, stepping back, and one of the biggest things with resiliency is being having gratitude, which is something that we should all practice every day. And it doesn't have to mean, religion. It's not specific to anything. It's just being grateful for what you have. And even, in moments of difficulty, we can still wake up and say, you know what, I am grateful that I woke up today, and I am breathing, and I'm healthy, right? Or that, maybe I'm not so healthy, but I'm able to get help for my health, right? So even in those bad moments, we can always find something to be grateful for. And actually, Monday is a worldwide great gratitude day. So
Oh, that's wonderful. Gratitude is one of my favorite practices, and it's very important to do it for myself throughout the day
hmm
because I can start very grateful for my morning, and then
yeah,
as the day progresses, you get
it goes south. It goes completely south.
less, and so I constantly go back to the practice of gratitude and how really that does help to see you putting things in perspective.
It does. It really
You
does.
know, we have a home. We still have food on our table.
Right.
We're all together. For the most part, we're healthy.
Yeah.
So I think that those little tiny things that we take for granted every day in these situations that are so difficult are really important to remind ourselves that we're lucky to live in a country where you can open your tap and get clean water
Yes.
just for that,
Yes. Yes.
so little things are good to stay sane. What else I think you talked about getting a jump on your day, for
Oh my God,
example.
that's my
That's a
favorite.
tough one for me.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. So getting up before my kids is really hard for me
I know. I know yours are little, and maybe they're still waking up in the middle of the night, and
sometimes.
sometimes not getting sleep and stuff like that. For me, it's important with or without COVID, because I like my time out. So the reason why I really make it a point to get up early in the morning is because I like my time out before everything, goes to hell in a basket. Because, all the kids are like running around, and I need this, and where's my tie, and I forgot this, because even if they're doing virtual, they still have to wear their uniform.
Hmm.
And so I need my time out because I really need to reflect in the morning. And when I don't do it, my day doesn't go as well as when I have my quiet time. Even if it's 10 minutes, it makes a huge difference in my life. So I like doing that. And then if I have more time, then I'll check some emails and I'll get some of those things done, which really allows for more sane time with the kids. Because then I'm not rushing. So then I could, put them down. I can prepare their breakfast. I could say, hey, what are we doing for today? Everybody has their login, all those things. Because then at least I feel like I accomplished something. Um,
So we talked about establishing daily routines, setting up schedules, trying to get a jump on your day, the workspace, the personal workspace,
so
even for the
important.
children,
Mhm.
right? Not just us. We're not the only ones that need a desk and an office.
They do, even if it's just a little tiny area. So it's also good because then they know it's theirs. This is my space, right?
Mhm.
I own this area, and they can feel proud about it. And you can have them, if they can put something that's really personal for them, something they really love, on that in that area, because you want them to feel good about it, right? Because that just shifts your thinking.
Yes, and that's exactly right. Just like we need our space, they need their space. They no longer have, their little school desk where they have all of their things and perhaps their name. We did create a space for the kindergartner, and she loves it. And she knows that when she sits down
See,
there, she
it
is
makes such a
doing
difference.
kindergarten.
Yeah.
And something else that's also really important is allow children to express their
Yes.
feelings. How can you get kids to express their feelings?
So
Kids, young and old.
right, it's really hard. So then you have both ends. So the little ones, it's difficult for them to express their feelings a lot of the time. So that's when you'll see like tantrums, or they'll cry for no reason, or they'll just be oppositional. So a lot of times, maybe drawing we can do, because when kids are doing some kind of activity, it's easier for them to talk to you. Also, before going to bed, they usually tend to have like their guard down, so it's much easier for them to be open. So it's things like, how was your day, or how are you doing with school, how do you like your teacher, just try to provoke conversation, prompting them with different questions that you can ask. And it's okay to be sad. Mommy gets sad sometimes. Have you been feeling sad? Things like that. It's very important to do with the little ones and with the teenagers, definitely, because
Oh,
those are not going to
absolutely.
want to say anything. I find dinner time is always a good time for us to have a conversation as a family. So I'll usually start, and of course, they have nothing to say because it's like, "How was your day? Good. What did you guys do today?" Same thing. It's that kind of conversation where it doesn't really flow. So we practice that. We talk about that. We've been doing a lot of board games, which have been so much fun. We took the dust off, Monopoly. Um,
Yeah.
so those are real fun. And then we were able to do that. We actually found a Monopoly that was house divided, and it was the Democrats against the Republicans.
How fun.
It's so much fun. And so we got a lot of conversation out of it. It was really fun. And we were all safe at the end. Nobody hurt anyone.
Oh,
So
good.
that's and so, but always ask. You need to always check in with your kids. I think every day, when we go back to normalcy, when you pick up your kids or when you pick them up from daycare or when they come home, it's always a good time to ask and just check in and see how they're doing. And never, whenever they tell you something, try not to be surprised or mortified, because then they probably won't want to tell you anything else, right?
That's
So,
such an important thing to think about. And I think that this is a great thing to carry on to as we return someday to regular life, is
mhm.
to remember to always check in. I feel like this is important at all times, but of course, especially important when there's something going on, whether it's a change or something. And this is definitely one of those situations where it's additional burden, additional stress, and we are feeling as parents additional burden and additional stress, and maybe talking to them can help us kind
Yeah.
of deal with some of those feelings.
Well, if you think about it, most adults can't wrap their head around it, right? As adults, we have difficulty understanding how long is this going to be? What are we going to do? I mean, what's going to happen? And then we have the financial stress on top of that because some people, are we, furloughed? Are we going to go back to our jobs? Am I going to have a job? So many people in the hotel industry and travel industry, which is a lot of what we do here in South Florida. Are they going to go back to jobs? So you add that to everything else. It's so difficult. So having that time to just bond with your family and talk back and forth, like you said, it's very helpful for both. Um,
And we have a question: how can we hide the stress that this situation is giving us to our kids? I mean, how do we manage that? Do we hide the stress? We try to always put up, a strong front for our kids.
right.
Do we hide it, or do we? How do we handle that?
So it depends on the age, also, because you don't want to be talking to a 3-year-old about you're worried about money, right? I think we again, I think it's we have to live within the reality that we have. So, if mommy and daddy are struggling financially, this is their reality. So, right now you can have a family, obviously they're a little bit older. And you can have a conversation, right now we're going to have to be a little bit more frugal. We're going to have to go on a budget. But it's okay. Things will get better, but it's just for now. And it's okay to have those courageous conversations with your kids. Um, but then again, you have to check in before you do that, right? Because if you're really frazzled and you're really upset, it might not be a good day to do that. Um,
Mhm.
so maybe write down in a paper, what your worries are, and then what can you do to solve? What is in your control, and what things can you do to solve those, your biggest fears? Because nothing gets solved if there's fear, right? If we are afraid, nothing's ever going to get solved. So we have to really see what is it that I'm afraid of, and what solution can I bring to it, and then you can work through that. And then I think it's not about hiding. It's about not being frazzled. I think it's okay to have the conversation, but if you're too frazzled, kids absorb that, and you don't want them to be
No,
absorbed.
absolutely. They
They want to
feel
see
it.
a right. They want to see a parent that we're all going to have problems, and it's okay for children. I always tell my patients, my clients, even my friends, it's okay for kids to fail. It's okay. It's fine. It's part of life, right? You rather a little one fail than a big one. So if they do something that's wrong, and I don't mean fail in academically, I mean fail like they made a mistake
Right.
or they did something that was incorrect. It's okay, and we talk through it. But we learn that it's okay. You made a mistake, but this is going to be the solution to it, right? And that's how we have to be too.
That's right. And I want to remind our viewers that we are here with Dr. Patty Ares Romero. She's Chief Medical Officer of Jackson Behavioral Health Hospital, talking about how to stay sane during times of COVID, which I think really applies to how to stay sane in crisis mode. I feel like we're in crisis mode all the time. Um, Also, you talk about, which I kind of chuckled a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, when I read it on the on the blog post, set boundaries. When you talk about being able to set interruption, boundaries on interruption. Um, so yes, it is a challenge in my home,
Yeah, I'm
and
sure.
with a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. The 5-year-old is actually starting to understand. So
Mhm.
how can we set boundaries without, maybe hurting our kids' feelings, or how do we set
Right.
boundaries?
So things such as, for instance, like with a 5-year-old, it would be perfect to say, when you're in school, mommy doesn't interrupt because it's important for you to pay attention to your teacher. So when mommy's on a call with her boss or her employee, whatever, a person, mommy can't be interrupted because then she really can't pay attention, and it's just going to take that much more time for me away from you. Big red sign is always a good thing because kids respond to color.
I'm gonna
So
try that.
yeah, red sign, stop, stop. It's very easy because those are things that kids are used to seeing. So they're like, oh, okay, I need to stop, right?
Okay.
Or you could set a timer. Kids respond to timers, just like you do with timeout, right? So if you ever put your child in timeout, it's 1 minute per year of life. So I like the kitchen timers, which are ding 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 boom, like those kids love. So you
Hmm.
set a timer. You say, okay, mommy's going to be, you can't disturb mommy while this timer is on. So just cues like that to help them because we can't expect for them to be perfect.
No,
Um,
absolutely. And it's very difficult. They want our attention, or they need something. And, I'm very fortunate that I'm able to have help here with me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to get any work done at all.
yeah,
But still, they still want me
yeah.
most of the time, and then also daddy. So we're all kind of, but I'm definitely going to try that stop sign. We do timers. Timers work great in our
I love
homes.
timers. Yeah.
So timers are fantastic. So we have a question here. Timeout is a minute for the year of age.
Mhm.
That's what I've heard too, right? It's
Yeah.
1 minute. Like if they're
Yeah.
5, then
So
it's 5.
when they're a year old, 1 minute
Oh,
is
it's a lifetime.
eternal
Mm.
for them. And yeah, and it's okay. And, with my kids when they were little, I had a timeout chair for them. And so it's okay. We're gonna go to the timeout chair for now. And the same thing, you do a timer. Um,
Yes.
yeah, because it's really not about punishing the child. It's really about bringing conscious to the child of understanding whatever happened was a no-no, and this is your consequence, right? Because for every action we do in life, there's a consequence, good or bad.
Good or bad. That's right. And that's
Right.
very important. Yeah, the try not to make it a punishment. I just say, you need to cool off, and this is what we're gonna do.
Right. This is the
Um,
consequence.
I do want to spend a little bit of time. We maybe for 5 minutes. Let's talk. We've been spending a lot of time talking about families. Is also that affects me personally. So, but also I would like to talk about people that don't have this built-in pod.
Yeah.
We know the stresses that people living in closed quarters can create. Well, what about those people that are single, that are now working from home? They don't have that interaction, that perhaps don't have, a group that they can feel comfortable with. Maybe they even have some immuno issues that they can't even go out very much, or even have a closed pod, like we call this new word, our little pods. So what do you see? Have you seen that in your practice? Have you seen that in
Yeah.
your
So
clients?
we see a lot of people, like you say, that they their sort of socialization was working, right? They used to have friends at work, and they used to socialize, um, and so it has been quite a struggle for them to be able to work from home, and you tend to isolate, right? And even people that are single, I mean, how do you date during COVID, right? I mean, you just can't. So, my biggest advice to my patients and clients is to do a lot of Zoom meetings. So, catch up with people that perhaps you hadn't had the time because you've been working or you've been so busy, and try to catch up with them. We have wonderful, Facebook and all these other, LinkedIn, and just, catch up with people that perhaps you haven't talked to in a year or you haven't talked in a while, or maybe people from college, and do a Zoom. People would love to hear from you. You'd be surprised, how much people would love to hear from you. And even calling our older relatives. they've really been isolated because, the kids are afraid of them going out. They're afraid of going out. They might have some medical issues as well. So, when they receive a call from a loved one, it's like a celebration.
Yeah.
So we have to remember them too, and remember to reach out. I know I'm very close to my siblings and my sister-in-laws, and so we would do, when the first was really really bad, we would do like a Friday happy hour Zoom meeting, and everybody was in their home, and we got to talk. And of course, my mother couldn't get on it; she couldn't understand the whole Zoom thing, so we would put her on the phone, and but it was fun because at least we got to have that time together and really share. We're beings that we love to be together and we love to socialize. So I think that's been the hardest thing that we've been hit with. Everybody talks about social distancing. I personally call it physical distancing.
Oh, yes. So
It's,
important.
yes, it's physical. It's not social. There's nothing, we should still be social.
We also switched to physical distancing because
Yeah.
I can still be social. I may not be able to give you a hug, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's really physical, because when we talk about 6 feet away, it's physical. This is all physical. So, but we do need to stay social, and in fact, there's a research. Oxytocin is this hormone of happiness, and we release it when we breastfeed. We release it when we fall in love, when we get hugs, even when we pet our dog. Like, we really love one of our pets, and we're petting them. Whatever, we get that oxytocin. And actually, there's a new study that just came out that said, even if you socialize and you have that emotional connection, even if it's over a Zoom or any kind of social media, there's actually levels of oxytocin being released. So
That's amazing.
it is. That's how important it is for us to have that social connection, and really stay connected. And it doesn't matter, the highs or the lows. Part of having that tribe, that pod, that whatever we have, it's important for us, to stay well and to be healthy.
That's great. That is such a good. I mean, that's so wonderful that you would actually put a medical explanation to it, because I love having these Zoom kind of get-togethers with my friends. We just kind of throw it out there. Well, who can get on now? And then everyone just whoever can. There's people on a they're doing their home exercise and they're like, it's okay, I'm gonna work out, but I'm gonna have you guys on. And so I have friends that have started doing these like baking Zoom meetings, and they all kind of say, we're going to bake together, but everyone in their own kitchen.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to see that it releases this chemical, the oxytocin, that is released when we all, that makes you happy. So that's a great tip. That's amazing. So I want to encourage everybody. Our time is up, and I want to encourage everybody to follow us on social media. InfluenceCom, myself, the doctor, and Jackson Health. We're all on this scrolling thing in the bottom. So if you guys could all follow through, and then you'll get all this information as well. Write to us if you have any more comments. If you're watching this on the replay, go ahead and write in your comments, and we will try to address them. And hopefully the doctor will be able to address them for us via email. So I really encourage everyone who's watching this on the replay to go ahead and send us your comments, and we will try to get them answered. So thank you so much, Dr. Ares Romero, for your time. And we hope to see you back again.
I'd love to be back.
Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.